We're going to do something called kind of speckling kind of things, not speckling. I've lost my train of thought. But anyway, let me show you a couple different brushes you could use depending on what you have at your house. One brush that makes these shapes, the rounded shapes like this, is a brush that looks like this. It's got kind of the round, it's flat, and it has kind of a rounded top to it there. If you have one like that, that's a good brush to use if you have something like that. If you don't have anything like that, there's a little brush like this. It's called a funny brush. You can order these online, but it has like little eraser, rubber eraser things on the tip here. That's gonna make more this kind of spots on your page. That rounded one I showed you, that's going to make more like this rounder shapes on your page. I also have two regular round brushes. I have a 10 here that has a very pointed tip. It doesn't work as well. That gives me more of this shape and this shape. I also have one here that's a little older, and you'll see that it's not got a very sharp tip. It's kind of a little more rounded. This is like an 8 round. That actually gave me more of this because it's an older brush. So whichever one you want to choose, that's whatever you've got, kind of brush you've got to work with. That's how it'll kind of look at the end of the day. I'm going to use this kind of rounded, it's the 8 round that's kind of worn out on the tip. That doesn't have a very sharp tip. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the sky. This is going to be wet on wet. So what I did is I turned my paper upside down, and I'm going to take water and do the sky first and get it all wet. So let's start with that. And then I'm going to take some, like an ultramarine blue, a basic blue from my palette, and just kind of drop it in there and let the water run it around. Again, you can tip it, make it run, direct it a little bit with your brush if you choose. You can put, depending on how dark you want your sky, you can put more pigment on it or less. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like this. Rinse my brush out. Once I get done with the sky, I'm going to turn it upside down, turn it the other way around. So I'm going to turn it and let the sky dry. We'll do our buildings in that background later once the sky dries a little more. So to get started, we're going to do a purple color. If you have a purple in your palette, use that. Otherwise, you can use a reddish pink with a blue, with an ultramarine blue to make your purple. So you can mix that up in one of the little empty palettes if you've got it. My particular one has purple in it, so I'm just going to use that. And I'm going to start with a darker pigment. So again, we've got like 3 rows of the lavender growing here. So I'm going to start at the bottom of a row, and again, this is my 8 round brush, but with a kind of rounded tip that's got kind of worn down. And I'm doing a darker pigment. And I'm just dappling it. So darker pigment again, I'm going to get this row going. If you have too much water on your brush, it's going to get a little lighter like this here. You can always go back and put more pigment on the brush. You can do that either now or when it dries. After it dries, if it dries too light for you. Since this is closer, there's going to be more detail. Again, this is closer to me than this part of the picture back there. That's going to fade back a little, so it's not going to be as pronounced as the flowers up here. If you turn your brush a little bit, you know, if it's looking too similar on the strokes, kind of move your brush around a little. You can roll it around a little and kind of move that. So I've got my darkest pigment down. Now I'm going to do a little bit lighter. You might want to mix a little of the purple in the empty palette, or just put a little more water in your brush. And then I'm going to start my next one. Let me test on my paper here. So it's going to be a little bit lighter than what I've got down. Okay, I'm going to mix a little of that purple in here with a little more water, just so it gets a little lighter. Let's see how that looks on here. A little more water even. There, that's probably the color I want, a medium dark. And I'm going to start going next to the dark stuff that I've put down. Put a little more water to make it a little lighter. Some of my medium color looks like it's drying. If I put the lighter stuff over it, that's fine. And you can kind of mix it in a little bit. I can do some of the lighter down here now that the darker stuff is dry, and mix that, go right over the top of it. Makes it all a little closer, fills in some of that color. Go over some of the stuff that's already dried, fills in some of the space. Go here. Oop, that kind of all ran together. We'll fix it, not Tori. Now I'm going to put lots of water in with that, so you can barely see that the water is even, that the paint is even lavender. So I'm going to put some more water in there, so it's almost like a little pale, pale pink color. I'm going to do that. Looks like I need a little more of the medium color right in here. in this row. So I put a little more pigment in it. I'm going to go back over some of these just to get it a little darker, because it, of course, when it dries so much lighter that it's getting, add a little more pigment to get some of that medium tone in there. So I've got light, and then the medium, and then the darker hue. I'm going to go back and put some more water in for the light on this row. You can leave a little more white space on this very light color. Not fill it in too much if you want. So it kind of gives you the illusion of your field and the gradient colors. Looks like I forgot this part. So I'm going to take more of my little medium stuff here, and then some more of my lighter stuff here to get some of this. Think it's still too dark or too much up here in the lightest part, you can dab it with your paper towel and pick up some of that pigment color in there. Run this off the page so it looks like the final row. Don't want that to stand out like a white triangle corner. So dab that a little bit. Maybe a little more here. A little more medium tone I'm putting in this one. Looks like it's drying awful light to me. So I'm going to drop in a little more of the dark. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry. It's pretty wet. Okay, we can move on to tall trees. So again, this one, these 2 and 3 in the front, they're gonna be closer to me, so the dots, the spots are going to be more pronounced. What I mixed up for those trees is kind of a bluish green color and a brownish color. So it gives it a darker hue. And then I also mixed up a brighter green, a Kelly green with a brown here. This is just Kelly green with a little green blue in it to give you a different color green. So depending on what you want to do, these are kind of, I made those kind of a bluish green color. So I'm going to start with my darkest color. I'm going to pretend my light source is kind of coming from this left side, going this way. So I'm going to make this side of the trees a little darker, down here at the bottom darker, a little darker, and down here a little darker. And then I'm going to come in with one of the brighter colors and start filling in and making it lighter as I get to the left side of the tree. So again, just kind of speckling. This is kind of a bluish green color because that's the green I was kind of using. I don't want it too starkly different than some of the other greens in the picture. So I might come back, leave some of this white space that's in here, but come back with another green, a brighter green, like a sap green, or if you've got like a Kelly green or a bright green, and kind of go over it and kind of let it run together. This tree is behind this one, so as I go up this side here, it's going to be kind of in a shadow, so it's going to be darker, especially close to the tree, this close. And then as it comes out in the sun on the top, then that'll be the lighter part. Since this is the front tree, I'm just going to kind of fill in down here. It's the back side of the tree. Then I'm going to do the same thing on this tree. I'm going to come back like with a sap green with a yellow or a Kelly green with a yellow. And I'm going to start going on this side of the tree, kind of letting it run into it a little bit. But it's lightening up this dark down here. Going over pretty much most of the whole tree. So I'm going to need more of that color. A little more sap green in it than the yellow this time. I think that might keep it a little darker where it needs to be. Again, like sap green and a little bit of yellow. And then I'm going over the dark that's already on there. Filling in some of my shadow color on these trees. Trying to make these trees a little more dense than the flowers in this part of the field. So that's why I'm trying to fill in a little more around all the other dappling, so there's not as much white space in between. When I get to this field up here, I'm going to use a little more of an olivey green color, with green with a little brown in it, like a burnt umber or something like that. Move to this tree over here, fill in some more of that. I need a little more of the pigment in there. Get some more variation in this tree. Looks like this one's kind of fading out a little, so I think I might, looks like it's getting drier, so I'm going to take a little more of that sap green or medium green. I'm just going to come and make this one a little more defined. Got a little wet in, so it is running a little bit, but I think it needs to be brighter and more defined. So I'm going to come in and kind of redo where it's dry, where it's wet there. If that kind of runs together a little, that's okay. Same on this tree. It looks drying very light up at the top. So I'm going to take some more of that either Kelly green or sap green that you have and put over the darker bluish green shadow. Define some more of my leaves and the shape of the tree a little better. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, if you happen to have like one of the palettes from the library, it has something like a Kelly green, a bright green, a yellowy green. You could take the green you have and mix a yellow in it to make it this yellow-green color. And I'm just going to put some of that on this side of the tree and this side of the tree. But you'll see when it combines with the other color green that it kind of fills it in and gives the tree a little variation. Again, filling in some of my white spaces in the trees. Okay, so I got those trees started. Looks like my sky is pretty dry. It's a little cool yet, but I don't think the paint will run. So what I'd like to work on next is going to be the buildings back here with the reddish roof and a little gray shadow, and get that painted in. I am going to turn this upside down again and work at it from this direction. The colors you can use for this are a burnt sienna, is kind of a reddish brownish color. If you have that, see how red it is? You could put a little brown in it if you want. Mix a little brown in it to make it kind of that reddish brown roof line color. Do the roof on my second house. Second building, whatever that is. I'm going to take just the very, very tip of this brush and go down this roof line on this side. Just a thin line to remind me I have roof line over there. I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to turn my paper back around because that's going to be the wettest part of my paper. So I'm going to work from this side again. And that same burnt sienna reddish kind of color that I used on this roof here, I'm also going to use some of that on this road that goes through the picture, middle of the picture. So I'm going to get some more of that in my palette. And I'm also going to put a little lighter color in, a lighter brown. So I'm going to take there's something called a yellow ochre color. I could mix that in with a brownish color and have some of that yellowy color in it. And then I could also mix in a regular brown. And I'm just gonna take some of that out of my brush, but I'm going to hold it up and just start doing lines on the road. Now what you could do too is once the picture's dry, you could take some paper and cover up everything here but the road, and you could splatter it and spackle it with, by tapping your brush on it or something, but you would want to cover up all these other fields and these trees because you wouldn't want them with the brown speckles on. But you could do that to make the road look a little more like a road. Road over here. And I'm going to go to maybe the yellow ochre color that I mixed a little brown in it. Just give it a little different, lighter color to it. If you want to brighten the road, you could actually take just some of that color out of the palette directly, not put any water in it. Gives it a little brighter, a couple brighter streaks in it, not just all pale. And then I'm going to take that brush that has a pointier tip. So if you have a brush that has a pointier tip like this, I'm going to use that and put a little of this burnt sienna, the reddish color that the roof has. I'm going to put a little of that in here. But I'm going to use the tip of it and try not to, and hold it upright because I want skinnier lines, not as thick as some of the others. What I may do just to brighten this roof up a little bit is some of this yellowy, yellow ochre color, or the little yellow and brown mix if you've got that. I'm gonna put some of that on the roof here just to make it a little brighter. I'm going to let those dry a little. See how dry my trees are. Not too bad. So I'm going to work on these 3 trees back here and the this hillside back here. I'm not gonna do the lines on the houses yet because I'm gonna let that roof line dry. So I'm gonna take this darker green color that I used on the shadow side of these trees. And since these are further in the distance, they're not gonna be as defined, like the leaves wouldn't be as defined on them. So it's gonna run together with the other color paint more on these trees. So I'm not necessarily dotting it like I did those, but I'm using the dark green, bluish green, I think with a black was this one, just to give it a little darker color. Then I'm going to take that sap green, or the regular green color that I used on this part of the tree. I'm going to take that, and then I'm going to put that over it and in with it on the side. But again, I'm making these very close, putting some of it in here, so it all runs together and it doesn't look like individual leaves like the front trees would look. Maybe drop a little of this dark in here yet again. See if that might fade in too much on these. I might have to come back and do that dark on that side later. Let it run in a little bit on the side. Okay, I'm gonna leave those trees. Let's do this little lavender field here. This is a field in the background, and as you see on the picture, it's got very pale lavender lines going this way. So it's an illusion of this front field. So I'm going to take my light lavender. Not too much pigment in it because I want just to have a couple of those lines show up. Use more of the tip of my brush, and I'm just putting these in like this. For these hills back here, I'm going to take some of that sap green or Kelly green, and I'm going to put a little more black in it. Some of that with the sap green or the regular green, because I wanted a darker hill. And I'm going to do this kind of like I did these trees because it's off in the distance. I just wanted a little blacker. Fill in pretty much most of it. I'm going to dip it in this color here that has a little more of the black pigment in it. I'm going to drop some of that in the hillside and let that kind of run around in the hill. Mix in with the, get it a little darker. This hill here, and then this one over here, I'm going to take and do a little of this yellow ochre color and a little bit of that green. And I'm going to come and do this. This will kind of tie in color-wise to this field here that we haven't done yet. Turn it back around so I'm looking this direction, because what I want to do is start working on this field that goes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do more of an olivey color for this field. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my green and I'm going to put a little bit of brown in it. So if you have a brown, like a burnt sienna or burnt umber. So I'm making it kind of an olive green color with that. This is I'm going to do that particular field with a little more pigment, like this front field, the purple field in front. So I'm going to want fairly deep pigment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my dark side. And I'm just kind of dotting along my lines that I drew as my trying to keep a little more pigment in the bottom, the right side of the rose. Is kind of what I'm trying to do, is get the pigment in. And then I'm going to go lighter next to it and lighter next to it, like we did with the purple. Looks like I need a little more pigment. So I'm going to get some of that brown color, more of the green color. Drop that in here. It looks like it was getting kind of light on this one side, so I'm going to darken it up a little bit. And my last row here. Let those dry a little bit. I think what we can do is turn it upside down again. And I'm going to do the lines, the gray lines on this building. So what I'm going to do is in my palette, I'm going to take, if you've got black or a little blue, you could mix a little green in it if you wanted, but I'm going to do mainly black. And actually I'm going to try and find, I'm going to take my brush that has the pointier tip. I'm going to use that because these are a little finer lines. I'm going to put a few shadows on the building here, under the eaves, and here under the eaves, and then on this taller building as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this black that's in my palette. I'm going to put it over here, but I'm going to put a lot of water with it, so it's very gray. You can test it on your test paper if you want. See, it's a very soft gray color, and it'll dry a little bit lighter, but I want that very, very light for the shadow. And I'm going to just put a little bit here. I'm going to put a little on this side of the tree because I'm going to pretend that tree is in the front of the house. What you can do is, if it looks like too hard of a line there, blot your brush off, and then just kind of go over this line, and it softens this line here. So it looks like more like a shadow. Put a little teeny shadow on that side of the roof line. Again, taking away my hard line here for this shadow. If you think it's too far, like this shadow I think has gone too far on this side, I can take my paper towel and just blot it a little bit and wipe it a little bit. It kind of gets rid of some of the dark. I'm going to take a little bit of this then and do under the roof line here. Again, dry out my brush, and then I'm going to take this line back into where it started. I have to use clean water for that. Looks like my water is too dirty over here in this one bucket, so I have to use the cleaner water in another bucket, or go change your water out maybe. Again, dry brush and back brush it up into the shadow. Do the same thing on this roof line. I kind of ran into my black there. And then on this roof line, dry my brush and use soak up some of that shadow line. So it's a softer, it doesn't have a sharp edge on it, is what I'm trying to get away from on that shadow. There. You can barely see it, but it's there. Okay. I'm gonna leave that dry, see how I like it, look at it a little later. I'm gonna finish more on this field, so I'm gonna go back to my older round brush. I'm going to use this kind of green, the sap green with the brown color, the burnt umber or the brown. I'm going to put a little more water in it this time though, because we're going to go to the lighter shade. I'm going to keep a little more water in it just because I don't know that that's quite light enough. And I'm going to dab up this little test place I did. Okay, now I'm putting even more water in because I want this very, very, very pale green. And I'm going to do another row. Might have a little too much water in it. I can dab it up so it looks lighter. You can mix a little more of that yellow ochre in if you would like. Lightens it up a little more. You can keep a lot of white space in there, which opens that up. This particular last one, I put a little more of that yellow ochre color in with the green and a little less of the green. So it looks quite a bit lighter. See how that difference is there. And then not put quite as much on my brush. I can always, once I load my brush up, I can dip it off over here. And I kind of like that yellowy color. Makes the field a little brighter. I'm filling in down here just to make it look like the field comes all the way to the road surface and maybe comes over the road surface a little. That's why I'm doing this. And look, I forgot this whole corner. Well, there you go. And then for this area, I want that a little more pronounced. So I'm going to take a little of that yellow ochre again, a little of this green again. Dab it off and get the color in my brush, but dab off my brush a little. Put some of that yellow in here. Some white, some yellow, a little bit of the greenish. These seem fairly flat. And these hills here, I like this hill better. It's got a little more variation in it. So on this particular tree, I'm going to take some of that black and bluish green, and I'm going to go over that side of the tree again, just to give it a little more variation in color. And then the other green that I used here, that medium color green, I think is, I'm losing track of where it is in my palette, unfortunately. I think it's kind of this color. I'm going to put that on this side just to give the trees a little more life. They're still wet, so it's going to run into the other. Looks like I'm getting kind of a puddle at the top of this tree. I'm going to soak it up with the tip of my end in this tree. It's going to run together again, but if I can soak it up a little bit, it'll look a little better. I think on my building up here, I'm going to need a little more gray. So I'm going to turn it upside down because it doesn't have a very good shadow. I still got some of my watery black over here in my palette, so I'm going to take some of that. I think some shadow on this building from the other building. So I'm going to do a little shadow there. Maybe a little down this side of the building. On that side. More under the eaves here. And then again, take my dry brush and go along this edge to soften it, take away the line. So it gave it a little more dimension up there with a little more shadow. Okay, looking at my picture, stepping back, I see dark here. I see some dark lines here. I like that. Seems like this is a lot of the same color. There's light hues here, light hues there, so that's good. I don't think my road has enough contrast in it. I think it needs to be darker. So what I would do is take a burnt umber color, more of a brown color, and maybe do some more lines in it or something, just to give it a little different dimension. And I wanted a darker hue because it makes my picture too monochromatic or too all medium hues. You want to have that variation. So I think that gives it just a little better look. If it's still too light, once that dries, I would probably I could do it again with just a brown color. Thank you so much. We'll see you next month.